I thought I'd make a video today on modifying the oil system on your Ford Flathead, because after talking to a few people out there, a lot of people didn't know about this modification. So it's really not that difficult to do. You know, if you are confident enough in drilling a hole in your block and you know how to use a couple taps, you should be okay. For one reason, and I'll show you right here, this looks like a regular old oil canister for a flathead, but in fact, it's actually been modified to use a standard spin-on filter. So in doing this modification, it gives you the ability to use, late model style filters and not have to deal with that toilet paper roll style filter that used to sit in here. Now, the next reason to do this is it's called the one I'm showing you today is called a 95% oil mod. Basically what that means is for every cycle of the oil through here, 95% of it is being filtered. It's not 100% because your rear main has a separate oil galley that is below here. So that oil does get eventually filtered, but not filtered from the pump, into the block. It gets filtered, every so often. The old style system, which was just the canister with the toilet paper roll, this obviously wasn't here. This hole's the hole you got to drill. These two holes are already pre-existing, but they've been enlarged to accept 3/8 fittings with 3/8 line. So originally, you would have had one line coming down here, and your other line would have actually ran down here on the side of the block down here by the oil pan, and that's where it would drain back into, because this is only what they would call a partial flow oil filter, because it only filtered 10% of the oil at a time. So that being said, it would only filter 100% of the oil about every 45 minutes at 2,000 RPM. So, which isn't a bad thing. It still worked. Ford thought it worked good enough to suggest a 5,000 mile oil change, which that's obviously not the case nowadays, but that's what they thought back then. So the old style oil filter does work, but the main reason to do this is it just gives you some more reliability. You're kind of updating the Flathead without taking away the vintage look of it still, if you go this route. To build this canister, it's definitely not no beginner fabricator project, I'll put it that way. It definitely took a lot of ingenuity to get this to work right. So it is possible to do, it's not hard, but you definitely have to have a skill set of welding and fabricating to make it happen. Now, to actually just do the oil mod itself, a lot of people, if you're not so worried about just running like a remote oil filter, on like a firewall or something, a lot of people just run like braided hose off this and then mount the filter wherever they want to. Okay, so I got another block swapped into place of the one I've been working on. This is a block that still needs to go to the machine shop and be hot vatted and Magnaflux and all that. But this type of modification is something you want to do prior to even going to the machine shop. So, and the reason I say that is because you're literally drilling directly into your oil galley. You're going to want this thing hot vatted and pressure washed and clean after the fact, not after it comes back from the machine shop. So this is something I would do before the machine shop. In order to find out where to drill your hole, you need to find a dowel rod, or I'm just using a piece of 3/8 fuel line right here. You literally, let me use the straight end, literally take and just insert it all the way into your oil galley. So now I can see exactly where my center point is on the oil galley. Now, something you have to take into consideration before you go drilling a hole is you have to make sure that when you transfer a hole punch here or whatever to drill your hole, you need to make sure you have enough room here and enough room here to get 2 fittings in. Because if you look at my other block I did, they're extremely close and they still fit barely. And that's not the only 2 you got to worry about, because if you get too high up into the block, well, now you're interfering with, you know, the deck of the block and you're not going to be able to screw your fitting in. So it's kind of a guessing game, but you can really see, you know, where it should be. I mean, at best, I would say somewhere from the center of this hole to the center of this hole is probably about a half of an inch, I mean, 1.5 inches, I would say. So doing this again, you just really want to look at this, you know, you want to find the center of your dowel rod or whatever you're using. Look down in this hole, see where that one's at, because you can still see the top of this. And you just want to locate the best place to drill this hole. So, I believe that is the best place for this hole to go right here. So, get a hammer, make my mark, and now we're just going to get to drilling. So, I do highly suggest starting with, you know, something small. Make you a good pilot hole first. Make you a good pilot hole, make sure you get all the way in the oil galley, and then take your rod out, you don't need it no more. Make sure you get a nice straight line drilled into your oil galley. So, I'm just gonna check it. Okay, I'm not 100% yet. Okay, clear. I'm gonna blow this off. You guys can see down there, but it is all the way into the oil galley. That right there is really the most difficult part. All that really has to be done now is you got to open these holes up to the right size to be tapped, but since there's already holes there, it's fairly easy. So, let's get to it. Almost there. Okay, so before we start tapping these threads, we've actually got to tap the ones on the inside, which are right here. That is where your oh my gosh, set screw is going to go. Doesn't take way. There's a little hole in here, so here's my thread. Okay. Okay, so this is a 3/8 pipe tap, NPT. So, I know this isn't the correct way to do it, but it's the easiest way to do it. So, now, it's a nice new 3/8 tap. There's something on top. Okay, those are all tapped. So now we are on to the final hole. Which I'm hoping because we're starting off like here. So starting to go for that hole is not optimal. But we need to go which is start moving. It's not a flat tap area. That's it. Okay. Now it's just all down to putting your set screws in. Some people only put one set screw, but I feel a lot more comfortable with two in there butting up to each other to lock each other in place. Because other than that, it's just a free open hole that it can come out of if it decides to. Lock that last one in tight. You're good to go. Okay guys, that's really all there is to it. It's really not that difficult. You just, need to grow a pair of balls and drill a hole in your block. But other than that, I hope y'all enjoyed this and see y'all soon.